Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. The Russians carried out another massive combined missile drone attack through the entire territory of Ukraine, trying to destroy or at least to significantly damage the entire energy infrastructure of Ukraine. And this picture was published this morning by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see the approximate routes of Russian missile and drones that were attacking the territory of Ukraine. As you can see, according to this picture, the Russians used hundreds of drones. The Russians used Ha-101 missiles. They used dozens of these missiles. The sources reported that up to 20 missiles of this type, or 24 missiles, were used. The Russians used Iskander missiles, and the Russians used hypersonic Zircon missiles that were launched from the area of the Black Sea. According to this picture, we see that the Russians were attacking the city of Kiev and the territory around the city. The Russians attacked the territory around the city of Vinnytsia. The Russians attacked the city of Poltava. The city of Kharkiv was under attack. The Russians attacked the city of Zaporozhye, and the Russians attacked the territory around the settlement of Kryvyi Rog. So let's discuss everything in details because we have lots of interesting updates. First, let's talk about the attack on the city of Kiev. The Russians, according to information we have, used lots of missiles, especially of Ha-101 type. We are talking about cruise missiles, and this video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were fighting with the Russian missiles overnight. And just according to this video, we can see how Ukrainians using air defense forces managed to bring down up to 3 Ha-101 missiles that the Russians launched in the direction of the city of Kiev. And telling the truth, and before we continue, I would like to point to attention that according to updates we are receiving from Ukraine, it seems that this attack wasn't effective and the Russians haven't managed to complete everything they were tasked for. Of course, the Russians managed to deal damage and they managed to destroy something, but it seems that they haven't managed to destroy everything they were planning. So this is the situation about the city of Kiev. Once again, the sources are saying that the Russians were trying to attack power stations number 5, number 4 and number 6. As of the morning of the 26th of February, we don't know for sure whether the Russians managed to deal damage to these stations. Another important area, the Russians attacked once again the Kiev substation number 7, the Kiev substation 750, which is located to the west of the city of Kiev. We're talking about this facility. According to information we have, the Russians used 6 Ha-101 missiles, 3 Zircon missiles, and 2 Iskander missiles. As of the morning of the 26th of February of 2026, we don't know for sure whether the Russians managed to get the target or to destroy it, but when talking about the pro-Ukrainian map, the map that was published by the pro-Ukrainian sources, we see that there were just 2 Zircon missiles that were heading towards this Kiev substation 750, but we see that most likely these missiles haven't managed to get the target and they were destroyed probably 10, 20 or 10 or 20 kilometers to the southeast of this facility. Another important area with explosions is the area around the city of Vinnytsia. So it seems that the Russians were attacking the Vinnytsia substation 750. We're talking about this object of energy infrastructure. And according to this picture, the Russians were attacking this object with dozens of drones and probably with 1 or 2 cruise missiles. So, and we see that the Russians were trying to once again to cut let's say high voltage lines in the western part, in the central and the western parts of Ukraine. So as you can see, one of the area that the Russians attacked was the Kiev substation 750, and the second territory that was attacked by Russians is Vinnytsia substation 750. So it seems that the Russians were trying to cut this line, this important line that connects the western part of Ukraine with the eastern parts of Ukraine. And if the Russians were able to deal a critical damage or significant damage to the Kiev substation 750, and if the Russians were able to destroy the Vinnytsia substation 750, then Ukraine would be cut into pieces, the western energy infrastructure and the eastern energy infrastructure. So this is the most important line of the entire energy infrastructure of Ukraine that Ukrainians are trying to protect with all means they have. If we take a look at this map, as you can see, we have started adding the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. We are about to finish with the western parts of Ukraine. As you can see, this line connects the city of Kiev, basically not just the city of Kiev, but lots of territories in the eastern parts of Ukraine with the western parts of Ukraine. So through this line, through the Kievska substation, we see that the line is going further in the southern direction towards the Vinnytsia substation. And then the line is moving further in the western direction from the Vinnytsia substation towards the western Ukrainian substation, this one, the most important substation in the western part of Ukraine. And this substation, the western Ukrainian substation, connects three nuclear power stations. Rovno power station, Khmelnytsky power station are going in the direction of this western Ukrainian substation, and we see that this substation is also connected with Hungary. So this is the most important substation that connects basically the most western parts of Ukraine, the European countries, with the central and the eastern parts of Ukraine. So that is why the Russians were trying to attack and to destroy this line today. And if you remember, during the previous days, the Russians were attacking this substation as well, trying to cut and probably trying to ruin the entire infrastructure of the most western parts of Ukraine. But once again, as of the morning of the 26th of February, pro-Ukrainian authorities, government officers haven't published anything on this matter. Telling the truth, we still haven't received even a single report that there are power outages through the entire territory of Ukraine or something like this. So once again, as of now, it's very early to judge about the results and the consequences of attack. It's better to wait for a few more hours and we will understand what exactly the Russians managed to destroy or what the Russians were planning to destroy. Another important area is the southern parts of Ukraine. The Russians attacked the city of Zaporozhye. As for this attack, according to information we have, the Russians destroyed this mall. The pro-Russian sources are saying that the Ukrainians were using this mall for weapons, as a warehouse for storage purposes. And I would like to remind you that these days, both the Russians and the Ukrainians are attacking each other in the Zaporozhye direction. Basically, it is the situation when the Zaporozhye battle is ongoing, very important battle, decisive battle of 2026, and it seems that the Russians discovered that the Ukrainians were using this, let's say, mall, this center to store weapons for military purposes. So that is why the Russians attacked this territory and destroyed it. Another important area that was attacked is the city of Kryvyi Rog, but it seems that the Russians were planning to move further in the western direction, probably towards the Vinnytsia substation through the city of Kryvyi Rog, but the Ukrainians intercepted the Russians' missiles above the city, and here we can see the video with the work of Ukraine's air defense. Here we can see a missile that fell down on the city. Maybe it was unsuccessful launch of the missile or something like this, but according to information we have and according to this picture, we see that Russian missiles haven't managed to move further in the western direction, and they were intercepted to the north of the cities of Nikolaev and above the city of Kryvyi Rog. So I'm just trying to tell you that most likely during the previous days, during the previous weeks, the Ukrainians managed to improve their positions, air defense positions, significantly in the southern parts of Ukraine. We're talking about the territory between the cities of Nikolaev and Kryvyi Rog. Most likely the Ukrainians managed to reinforce their air defense forces in this region with the purpose not to allow the Russian missiles to break through this line, with the purpose to attack in the direction of the western part of Ukraine, especially in the direction of the Vinnytsia substation number 750 and in the direction of the western Ukrainian substation 750 as well. So, which means that most likely the Russians may try to carry out another massive missile and drone attack in coming days with the purpose to destroy the current level of air defense forces of Ukraine. According to information we have, according to the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, during the previous night, the Russians used 459 drones and missiles altogether. The Russians used 2 or 3 hypersonic missiles of Zircon type, 11 Iskander missiles, and 24 Ha-101 cruise missiles. And according to information we have, according to the morning of the 26th of February of 2026, lots of missiles of the armed forces of the Russian Federation were destroyed or intercepted by the Ukraine's air defense system. And now we understand why the Russians were attacking Ukraine during the previous night. First of all, the Russians were attacking Ukraine because of attacks that were carried out by Ukrainians during the previous week. We have already discussed the situation. If you remember, we discussed this video. Here we can see the some object of fuel infrastructure that was damaged by the Ukrainians during the previous week. Also, the Ukrainians attacked the military plant that the Russians use to produce Iskander missiles and so on. So that is why the Russians were attacking Ukraine during the previous night. And another important thing that the talks in Geneva are going to take place very soon, and the Russians are trying to improve their negotiation positions. Zelensky, yes, they had a call with the President of the United States of America. He said that he have just spoken with US President Donald Trump. Representatives of President Trump, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, were also on the call. We discussed the issues that our representatives will be working on tomorrow in Geneva at a bilateral meeting, as well as the preparation for the next meeting of the negotiating teams in the full trilateral format at the very beginning of March. We expect that this will make it possible to move to negotiations at the leaders' level. President Trump supports this sequence of steps. Later, this information was also confirmed by the Western media. Donald Trump is currently speaking on the phone with Zelensky. That was stated by Axios correspondent Barack Ravid. Furthermore, we have a report that Trump, during this call, told Zelensky over the phone that he wanted a resolution to the Ukraine conflict as quickly as possible. The sources are saying that Donald Trump wants to finish the conflict within a month. According to sources, Zelensky gave the US president a different deadline by the end of the year. So we can see that the war may continue for another 9 months, and obviously Zelensky is trying to continue the war until the midterm elections that are going to take place in November in the United States of America. Another important thing is that delegations of the Russian Federation and Ukraine have already departed to Geneva. First, we're going to see bilateral meetings between Ukraine and the United States of America. Then we will have the bilateral meeting between the Russian Federation and the United States of America. They will discuss probably upcoming talks between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States of America. And I would like to point your attention that Zelensky insists to move the meeting on the leaders level, but the Russians are saying that the conditions are not ready to begin talks between Putin, Zelensky and Trump. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, we received additional changes. And first, let's talk about the Constantinovka direction, where the situation for the armed forces of Ukraine continues deteriorating. This morning, this video was published by pro-Russian sources, and here we can see the consequences of Russian attack on the dam. And as you can see, the dam was destroyed, and we can see that the area was flooded, and we see lots of water. We see that the main supply lines that the Ukrainians used to support their contingent in the southern part of the city collapsed, were cut by this water, and Ukrainians probably currently suffer huge problems with logistics, with evacuation of wounded, and with additional supply. According to information we have, the Russians several days before this attack launched their major offensive operation in the direction of the city of Constantinovka with the purpose to break through Ukraine's defense and to force them to fall back. Currently, the clashes are taking place in the south and in the southwestern parts. Furthermore, we have changes on the ground. We have this video published by pro-Ukrainian sources, where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians that were moving to the south of the city of Constantinovka. So these are the changes between the dates. For example, this is the end of the 23rd of February, this is the 24th, and this is the 26th of February of 2026. The Russians, according to these updates, managed to establish complete control over this facility to the south of the settlement, and during the previous 24 hours, very huge activity was recorded in the eastern part of the city. Lots of artillery strikes, lots of attacks with drones were carried out by Russians in this part of the settlement, which means that maybe the Russians during the upcoming hours are planning to launch another wave of attacks, another offensive operation with the purpose to break through Ukraine's defense also in the eastern part of the city and to establish a foothold in this area. So in coming days we'll see lots of updates, most likely exactly from this territory. So the Russians, as we can see, are trying to tighten the news around positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in the city, but according to information we have, the Ukrainians are still holding their lines. Now let's move further. As for the Slaviansk direction, during the previous 12 hours we haven't received anything special, just videos of how Russians were attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine around the settlements of Alexandrovka and further to the north around the forest, this huge forest, which means that the Russians are moving further and further in the western direction. As for the Zaporozhye area, during the previous 12 hours we haven't received anything special, just 2 videos that were published by pro-Ukrainian sources. In this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking soldiers of the armed forces of the Russian Federation in the northern part of the settlement of Priluki at these points, which means that this territory is under complete and strong control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And another video was published from the southwestern part of the settlement of Ternovata. Here we can see the same story. The Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation in the southwestern part of the settlement, which means that the settlement of Ternovata, at least its southwestern part, is under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. But I would like to remind you that according to different mappers, especially pro-Ukraine mappers and Western mappers, the settlement of Ternovata is under complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine, and the Ukrainians managed to recapture this settlement as a result of the Ukrainian major counter-offensive operation that started at the beginning of February. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.